I so wish that zombies would go back to having story be real world things.
I was gonna go to Belgium to go and find the man in the red scarf referred to in the game's terminal. How am I gonna go to Urzikstan, bro?
Alpha Omega has a special place in my heart. That felt like the early days again.
The new zombie story feels so limited. How the hell do they proceed from here? Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. Welcome back to the No Nonsense Podcast. We've had the Act Man on already from the sort of Halo side of the YouTube gaming community. And today we have yet another chap from the Halo side of things. I'm introducing today's guest, who's none other than Hidden Xperia. Hello, Luke. How's it going?
Why, hello there. Not too bad, not too bad. How you doing, Milo? Tell us about you.
I'm okay. I'm looking forward to a fresh year, 2024, implementing some New Year's resolutions, getting some content out, sort of hitting the ground running in January, and then building up towards what, for all intents and purposes, should be a massive zombies installment in Treyarch's next game, Black Ops 6, aka Black Ops Gulf War. The name is a bit of a mouthful, I'll admit, but gearing up for that in name and content too. But I'm curious, for you, with no new Halo on the horizon, what are you doing? Where's your head at? And where have your sort of focuses been over the last several months in trying to navigate a market where you've got a game that basically launched and then everyone was like, oh, this actually really is missing expectations. Like, now what? How have you dealt with that?
It's been a very interesting few years. It's been a few years that have required a lot of creativity, more so than before. I'm lucky that Halo has such a ridiculously rich history and so much stuff that's been made. Like there's still stuff from the Bungie era that I've not made content about, and like the early 343 era that's still like waiting for me to make a video about. Like, wow, Halo has so much. Oh yeah, dude, like there's so much. Like there's so much background content and even stuff from the games that like I could probably make a video about and like explain like a certain way or like approach from a certain angle that I haven't done yet. That's like waiting for that to happen. So I'm lucky that that's the case. But I don't know, suffice to say, it's not gone the way that any of us hoped it would do. I mean, one of our big hopes before launch was campaign DLC. There were loads of rumors and loads of hints at campaign DLC being a thing, and we found out recently that basically it got cancelled because they had to completely pivot their shift towards multiplayer and actually getting that into a state where it's even slightly comparable to how it should have been at launch, which is really annoying because Infinite's campaign would have been so perfectly fit for campaign DLC, more than any Halo campaign yet. Infinite's world and campaign and story and everything was practically begging for it. The ending set it up perfectly, and it's just not happening. So it really sucks.
Yeah, let's dive into that in some depth, but let's first just get some sort of background context in the mix for people that are less familiar with not just Halo Infinite, but overall the sort of like shape of Halo's trajectory over the last, let's say, like 5 years, right? And I think alongside that, be also interesting to, as we go, kind of use zombies as an analog and kind of compare and contrast to see how the last 5 years of zombies has gone and how the story on that side of things has developed, the lessons that Halo could learn from it, the lessons that zombies could learn from Halo, and just sort of see where we stand. So take us back just for a 30-second sort of synopsis to the sort of build up, I guess, to Halo Infinite, like where the Halo community was left with like previous games, and then what that kind of drought of content was like, and then you were getting to Halo Infinite and what community sentiment was like in the run up. Just a real quick zoom through.
So 343 took over Halo in 2012 from Bungie. Reach was Bungie's last game. Halo 4 was 343's first game. And despite like Halo 4's story being kind of loved by fans, for the most part, the rest of the game wasn't really liked. A lot of stuff was changed for the sake of it, for no necessary reason. And then Halo 5 comes along, and the same happens again to an even worse extent, because this time the campaign is not even good. The campaign, in fact, was set up to look like one of the best Halo campaigns of all time. It was looking like that, and then it came out and it was awful. At least most of us didn't like it. I know you did. But
I love it. But if people want to see why that's the case, I've got a full playthrough of the entire like Halo series. I'll link it in the description, and you can see me react to it, and you'll understand, I think, why my opinion on it is so contrarian. But that's besides the point. Most people definitely were disappointed with what they got when Halo 5 came out. I think that's a fair thing to say.
It was the first time in the entirety of Halo history where Halo didn't have a good story. Like Halo, where people didn't like it, because like even with Halo 4, people still loved the story, like enjoyed the campaign. It's just multiplayer and the rest of it was kind of sucked. Then Infinite comes along, and 343 take 2 dev cycles to make it. So Halos have always come out every 3 years. This came out after 6 years after Halo 5, and all the trailers, it was like, oh my god, the art style looks like a Bungie game. The sound design looks like, it feels a lot better. The gameplay is a lot more toned down. The story seems a lot more like in line with what people want. It was looking, you know, the whole thing about something seeming too good to be true and being too good to be true. It kind of ended up being like that. Although I say that because I still do love the game's campaign actually, and a lot of the artistic stuff I still think is amazing in that game. It actually feels like a Halo game again, which to me Halo 4 and Halo 5 at least visually did not look like a Halo game at all. Whereas Infinite absolutely does. But the problem with Infinite is that despite having 2 dev cycles, it launched with even less content than Halo 5 launched with, which was already an absolute bottom low for Halo. Like, Halo 4 was pretty good for that. Halo 5 launched with almost nothing. Halo Infinite launched with even less.
So to help clarify what that means, the Forge mode, essentially the custom zombies of Halo, right?
Yeah.
That was just not there, which is like big Halo staple, I think is fair to say. Like people really, really just love Forge. Co-op campaign was another thing, which is such a fundamental part of Halo, to the point that, what was that conference, or maybe it was an E3 where they'd said like, yeah, co-op campaign will definitely be there, and then it wasn't.
It was a GDC talk that Bonnie Ross did, the then like chief, I forgot what the exact term is. She was the leader of 343, and Halo 5 had no split screen at all. And then they were like, right, obviously Halo got popular because everyone couch co-op split screened it in like 2001. That is a staple that has to be there regardless of how many people use it. And then Halo Infinite releases, and multiplayer's got split screen up to 4 players, but campaign has none of it, absolutely nothing. And it still doesn't, by the way. It's just never happening.
Oh god, I didn't know that. Okay,
no,
damn.
Just completely cancelled.
Right. So that's the context on like the lack of content. Obviously, it had like a multiplayer mode, but it's just that beyond that, there were a lot of these really fundamental features that made Halo that were not present. Right.
I mean, there wasn't even a progression system. That's how bad it was. Like there was no number goes up. There was a battle pass, which was just boring, and no one was really interested in it. There was no progression system. No, like Halo's always had like military ranks that you go up and like you rank up and you get like a new icon, like every other game nowadays. Nothing.
So the analog, I would say, there is a little difficult to draw, because obviously with Call of Duty, as a content creator, I'm in a blessed position, and a fan as well. I'm in a blessed position to have just a deluge of content at most times. Not all times, but most of the time there's something new out, or there's something new on the horizon. So there's definitely not been a 6-year wait for zombies ever. That would be interesting. I'm not sure how I would deal with that. But there have definitely been times, for example, with the move from the Treyarch Zombies engine to the Infinity Ward engine, where basic features in the game have disappeared, and everyone's been sort of left wondering why the hell these fundamental aspects of the game are suddenly not there. So when Vanguard came out, people were like, hold on, this is so bizarre, because like, okay, there's no Easter egg, for example. Feels like that should be a really important thing. And then whether it's even just small things like a Pack-a-Punch camo, for example, I'm like, that's what makes zombies, right? Lots and lots of little things that make up the overall flavor of the mode. And interestingly, and I don't know if this was the case so much for Infinite, they added some new overall kind of like high level mechanics, things that would change the entire sort of system of play, essentially like a deck of cards that you could build out to be powerful in different ways, depending on what cards you drew that game, to paraphrase greatly. Which sounded kind of interesting. It was almost a sort of roguelike inspired system. And then it just went nowhere. Like, it was actually really, really shallow. There was no depth to it. Everyone got the same build every single game. And they were like, well, Why would I bother with these sacrificial hearts? Like, I'm just not interested. Was there anything like that in Infinite, or was it a little bit more of a safe play that they made? It's just that they did a safe play with very little actual breadth.
Yeah, pretty much. Like the gameplay direction was so much better than Halo 5. Halo 5 was very much an enhanced ability shooter. It was made during like the Advanced Warfare days, so like it was when that was the big trend. Like it was very, very much about making the player the power weapon, which is silly because that's not what Halo's ever been about. Halo has always been about fighting for control of power weapon. It's not being given them by default. And so Infinite toned a lot of it back. Went back to like a Halo 3 style equipment, which is like fantastic, where the power things spawn on the map, like at least the power like movement abilities and stuff like that, like grapple, thrust, and then like other things like a regenerator field or like smoke raid, for example, spawn on the map, and then you have to like fight the enemy to control that and to earn it. You're not just given it. Like Halo has always been a game about earning power, not being just given power, and Halo Infinite went back to that a lot more. But the problem was very much so like it I don't even know if it didn't really have breadth or depth in the content. It just lacked so much content. Like the core gameplay wasn't really the issue.
Okay.
It was more so about just like how little the game had, and how, even worse than that, like how long it took for us to get all that content in the end. I mean, like Infection, which is anyone who has played Halo multiplayer before, historically at least, knows how staple Infection is of a mode, not just for like playing Infection, but the amount of modes that are made off the back of Infection, the amount of custom games that are made in like Customs and Forge that require Infection to exist, that have historically been like staples of Halo. You couldn't do it because Infection wasn't there. And everything's there now. Everything's there now, but I mean, it's
taken years to get there.
I mean, it literally took them 19 months to add Infection, which is just insane. Like, it took them 6 months to add it in Halo 5 and 19 months in Infinite, which is ludicrous. It's there now, but like it's undeniable that it had a huge negative impact on the game at launch. Like, I mean, the reason the game lost so many players was because there was nothing to do in it. There was no content. Yeah,
and I can speak to that in that I played the game loads for about, I don't know, 2 weeks maybe, and then I was like, well, I could grind ranked now, but nah, I'm good. I'm good. And then I basically didn't play it ever again, which is a shame because I had just gone through doing that series of playing all those Halo campaigns and loving all those games, and suddenly being like, oh my God, I'm a Halo, like I can say I'm a Halo fan now. I've never been able to say that in my life because I've just not played them, but now I can. And it was like a really weird time to become a Halo fan and then be like, but I don't feel like playing Halo. Like, what?
Yeah. Dude, so many of my friends in real life were like that. They played Infinite when it first came out. Like, the first week, everyone was on it. And then literally within like a week, every single one of my friends, like real life friends, besides one, I had like 8 or 9 try it. Yeah. One of them was still left playing it. Everyone else was done. And I don't think they've ever played again, honestly.
And I think part of that, in my view, does actually have alternative sort of reasoning behind it to just the core offering wasn't good enough. I think partly the idea of releasing a first-person shooter in this day and age, which relies on your standard like TDM style matches and things like that, rather than the pivot that we've seen towards Battle Royale. I know that it's like a big taboo subject in the Halo community, but I think that it's undeniable that a lot more people are interested in Battle Royales these days than there have been historically in the past. And to release a game where you expect people to play CTF or something and think that that's going to retain them is to be very bold and maybe a little naive in my view. So I think that there was other stuff at play there. I just want to go on a tangent real quick. We will come back to where we are now, but something you've just said, it's really interesting to me, and I think it deserves a bit of kind of ripping apart from the Halo and the Zombies perspective, is the idea of the power curve, right? Where what the player base grew frustrated by in 5, it sounds like, is that you were the weapon at spawn in, like at default, and you had this arsenal of abilities that were already inherent to your character. Correct me if I'm talking about the wrong game here.
No, it's Halo 5, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
perfect. So, and the lack of seeking of the high-powered rocket launcher on the map, or the shotgun, or the sniper, or whatever, meant that the entire flow of the multiplayer experience was de-Halo-fied, if you will. That's a really interesting sort of theme, I think, in the zombies community, because obviously in the last few years, we've gone from spawning in with a pistol and being basically naked, like having nothing to fight against these hordes of zombies coming at us, and historically having to scrape points together by hook or by crook to get that first perk and still feel underpowered, and then eventually get Pack-a-Punch and feel like a god, and maybe go up a tier in Pack-a-Punch or get an alternate ammo type to feel even more kind of holy and powerful and incredible. It was very much always a quest along that power curve, and then you would eventually fall victim to your own kind of ego, I suppose, once you were that powerful, and you'd have to do it again, right? But then we transitioned to the state that we're in now, where you can spawn in with a loadout weapon, and like I have a video that is talking about, oh yep, this shotgun is the best shotgun in the game. This is these are the attachments you need. You spawn in with that gun, and it's literally better than any other weapon. And you've got it from the second you start the match. And you can do everything that you need to do with it, and you have no real incentive to ever get another weapon. And it's like, okay, well, that's kind of not how Zombies was meant to go. You can now also spawn in this most recent Modern Warfare 3 Zombies with acquisitions. You can craft wonder weapons and spawn into the game with them. Like, it's a very, very different kettle of fish to the usual Zombies grind to get up that power curve, right? And I think it would be foolish to say by default that is bad, but I think that it's totally valid to say by default that isn't the old formula, and therefore if you're in love with the old formula, a new formula like isn't what you came for, right? And so I'm curious, in the Halo case, with what they did in Halo 5, do you think that there's like an alternate universe where actually the decisions they made there were because of the fact that it just made for a better game, and the grind to get those power weapons on the map and to kind of play like hot potato with them almost was actually just less fun in that sandbox, and therefore they were like, you know what? This is the future of Halo, and actually everyone loves it. Like, is there a world where that could have ever happened, or no?
No, I don't think so, because... So, first off, real quick, just to touch on something. So,
Yeah.
Halo 5, power weapons were still a thing, power-ups still a thing.
Okay.
It wasn't that you didn't fight for, like, rockets or sniper or sword or whatever.
Okay.
It was more so that, like, a lot of the enhancements that you would typically find in the map, or that you would expect to find in the map as equipment or power-ups, you just had innately. Like, you had this spot and charge thing where you could do, like, a really obnoxious, like, thrust melee into somebody. You had ground pound, you had sprint, you had thrust, you had aiming down sights, you had hovering, you had like all this stuff that a lot of the time you would expect to be like on map equipment, kind of like how like a blend of like how equipment was in Reach and equipment was in or armor abilities were in Reach and equipment was in Halo 3. But back to your point, I don't think so, no, because that made like Halo 5's core gameplay, at least personally, I have a lot of friends that agree with me on this, but speaking completely personally, I could not play that game casually. It didn't matter how much or little skill-based matchmaking was in the playlist. It didn't matter what the playlist was. It didn't matter what weapons I was starting with, what map I was on. I could have been walking around on... There was a Lego version. Someone had made this really cool Lego version of a really famous map from Halo 3 called The Pit in Halo 5. Cool. It was really cool. It was this really bright, colourful map that was like as you would imagine Lego builders would be. And I remember looking at the map and thinking like, right, that is the single most casual looking map I've ever played. If I can't play this and feel like I'm just casually chilling back and playing, then this game can't do that. And I couldn't. Like, every mode, because there are so many inputs you have to worry about. You have to worry about sprinting, sliding, thrusting, aiming down sights, clambering, all these different things constantly going off, these constant changes of movement things you have to link together. It just felt so inherently sweaty. It didn't feel like there was ever a time where you could just chill and play the game. I know some people disagree with that, but me personally, I could never sit back and chill and play that game like I can with Halo 3, or like even Halo 4. Like, the main thing with Halo 4 was that it went the complete opposite way. It was far too casual, which is another problem. But like Halo 3, Halo 2, like any of Bungie's Halo games, I can just like sit back. You can't see me right now, but I'm lying back in my chair. Like I can just lie back like this and just play like Team Slayer or Social Slayer or whatever. Halo 5, it was like I was constantly having to like lean forward, engage the spine, and it was like, okay, we're sweating here. And so to go back to your point for the second time, I don't think that formula would ever have been long-term popular. I mean, Halo 5 didn't do like Halo 3, Halo Reach, Halo 2, even Halo 4 levels of like long-term. Right. It just wasn't that popular. It had its core audience. It had its fans that loved it because it was so like specialized and like niche. But it was never like wildly popular. And I think one of the main reasons for that wasn't because of like any one mechanic, but rather it's because of how all the mechanics coming together made the game feel so innately sweaty and gave it such an immediate barrier to entry. Yeah. Unlike like for example Halo 3 or like any previous Halo game, even like Reach and Halo 4 that were like very simple, like in terms of gameplay, very simple. The most complex thing was like you'd pick up a jetpack or you'd spawn with a jetpack in like Reach and 4's case, or like you'd pick up an equipment like a power drain in Halo 3. Like that was the most complex thing that a core player needed to know. In Halo 5, they needed to know about thrusting, sliding, about the momentum system and engaging Spartan charge, about how to engage ground pound, about where you can clamber, about the fact that you can, if you jump in your ADS, you can then engage a hover if you press X. Like there was so much that they had to learn. It wasn't, I don't think that game was new player friendly at all. And so Infinite made a very wise decision to go, it's not fully back classic, but it's far more classic than Halo 5 was. It stripped away a lot of that, brought back like Halo 3 style equipment where things spawn on the map and you have to fight for them, but also made the core gameplay so much friendlier to new players, and not even just new players, it like right now in this equation, they don't even matter. It's all about the casual players and the social players and the people that don't want to sit there and try hard all day and like engage their spine every time they play and lean forward. Like they just want to sit there and play.
Yeah, it's really interesting because to sort of play devil's advocate, in my brain, I'm like, man, the times where I am most frustrated by zombies are the times where they make it more casual friendly. Like as a hardcore player, I want it to be hell. Like make it hell in there, make it horror. That's my dream, right? Is like stuff where it's just where I'm having to do more inputs than my brain can muster, because that's such a rarely deployed kind of technique, I guess, in the zombies mode. In fact, I can't really think of many times where it's ever actually happened. There are a handful here and there, but not many at all. And so part of me is like, well, you're describing a very high skill ceiling and then also a very high skill floor, where like even to just be at the base level, you need to be really paying a lot of attention, right?
Yeah.
And so part of me is like, wow, that sounds really cool. But then part of me also knows that the experience of going into an MP match and having someone in like Advanced Warfare, let's say, with like a SCUF controller elastic banded to each foot and like a keyboard and mouse in each hand, and they're like doing some crazy like rain dance in the sky above you, and then they slam dunk and bash your head directly down into your spine. Like that never feels good, right? No. It just never does. And so I'm sort of torn, where on the one hand I'm like, man, just make it difficult, because high skill ceilings are like, that's why I enjoy playing CS. I suck at CS, but I enjoy it because I know that there's room to improve, right? But maybe Halo's just not meant to be that game.
My take on that is, you've already had Halo games that did that perfectly. Halo 2, for example, has like one of the lowest skill floors of any game, but also simultaneously a very, very high skill ceiling. You need a low skill floor and a high skill ceiling. And Halo 5, had the issue of a too high of a skill floor, whereas Halo 4 had too low of a skill ceiling. You need to strike that balance, and I actually do think that Infinite has got that balance pretty good. Yeah. But like going back to the zombies thing, I think it's interesting you say that actually. So I'm also like I'm playing zombies since World at War pretty religiously. Taking breaks here and there for obvious reasons. Didn't exactly feel like playing Vanguard for a year.
Fair enough.
But I kind of feel the same with zombies. Like I love Verrückt, for example, like World at War Verrückt. Like super hardcore. You're not getting past round 20 verrucked. Like that, super sprinters, that kind of stuff. I love that. But again, I think with zombies, it does need to be like a low skill floor, high skill ceiling kind of thing. And I think that the simplicity of classic zombies, spawning in with a pistol, with nothing, just like you don't have to know anything going in. You don't have to know about these upgrades or crafts or any of this like nonsense on the side. You go in, you're like, right, I've got a pistol. Everything that I need to earn is on the map. I have to interact with the sandbox to fight to discover all of that stuff in some way. I don't need to know anything going in. See, this is... I made a zombies video last year, and I mentioned this in that video. I think that Black Ops Cold War's perk upgrade system was a feature that I wanted in zombies literally since like BO1. And I think the style of how they did it was really good. However, the execution of having it be something that you do out of the game was a terrible idea. It needed to be something that was unlocked in-game. Like, the actual tiers of perks and like the upgrades that you got were cool as hell. I loved that. But the fact that you just upgraded them, not by like, for example, with Jug, like getting 1,000 kills while you're injured or whatever. No, you just went to the menu and you just pressed A. That was it. That was how you unlocked them. Like,
okay, so you wanted them to kind of be perma perks, but the perma perk would upgrade the perk rather than upgrading you.
Not even perma. I would have them be like actual mini kind of progression journeys in the game, because for me, zombies has always been about that in-game progression journey. It's never been about what happens in the menus or like what you do outside of the game or some battle pass crap that I don't care about. It's always been about the in-game gameplay driven journey. That journey from like spawning with a 1911 and no perks to, like you said, having a packed ray gun, packed flamethrower, all the perks, bouncing betties, sat on the catwalk on Doris, happy, right? That is the journey for me. And like in that like main progression journey, you have like kind of like almost like side quests. Like, for example, if they'd had perk upgrades be in game, like upgrading a perk would have been like a little side quest, or doing I don't know, like an Easter egg would have been a side quest.
So not to persist between matches. Crucially.
Yes, exactly. I think persistence with zombies. There's the odd little thing. Like, I think that BO2's perma perks, even though they were quite convoluted, I thought they were like cool little side Easter eggs that like, it's one of those things where I think zombies has always been really good at doing those kind of, if you know, you know, kind of gameplay mechanics. And that was one of those things that I really liked, where it's like, not necessary by any means, but like, if you know, then you know. And like, you get like an inherent bonus for that. But it's all done in game. It's not done in the menus. It's not done in the settings. It's not done in some UI screen out of the game. It's done whilst you're actually playing the game, killing zombies, earning points.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think, again, to play devil's advocate here, the quest, right, from going from nothing, just your M1911, up to being powerful, having those side quests along the way to make your jug super jug so you can take an extra hit, or maybe when you get red health while you have super jug, like you send out a little pulse that like kills a zombie nearby, or like whatever, right? Whatever they decided it to be. Would then mean that you had more homework to do and more setting up to do every game that you wanted to play to get that powerful again. And it's been this kind of ongoing raging debate for so long. And I remember it came to a head in Origins, because in Origins, like, it takes a while to get set up on that map. Like, it is no small feat to get through and get powerful on Origins. And especially at the time, because I think year on year, the zombies community gradually gets better and better and better, just like en masse. But certainly at Origins, before we'd had the craziness of BO3, like the most that we'd had to deal with in Black Ops 2 was like transit, right? Like, the community was basically saying like, yeah, it's just, it's like masses of homework to build this stuff and have to upgrade this stuff. And it's just like, oh my God, I just want to do it. I just want to be powerful now. So I think in some ways, obviously, I don't think it's a direct sort of cause and effect process that's happened here, but in some ways, I think the modern system that we have now, where you can spawn in with a Wunderwaffe, means that you at least do get the build-up of having had to unlock it in the first place, but then you just, it means that your work is not futile between matches, and you feel like you have achieved something. Like, you can sink 1,000 hours into the game, and your experience will look meaningfully completely different to someone that has only sunk 1 hour in. And I think there's room for that to be a really good thing. But maybe it's just that in the way that you're talking about, there's other aspects of whether it's upgrades or persistent progress that you feel like would be more effective there, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, the thing that really comes back to it for me is because the last new zombies game that I played a lot was Cold War. Like Vanguard didn't touch it, and then I played a bit of Modern Warfare 3 Zombies at the start, maybe like 10 or 15 hours of it, but like I don't feel any intention or need to go back to it. I'm very much satiated. But like my main thing is just like how Cold War did something that I'd wanted zombies to do since like literally 2010, and it was like so close to doing it how I wanted to do it. Then they just choked at the final hurdle. I'm like, this could have been so much cooler.
Yeah, there are at least just real quick. There are at least things in some of the other games, like for example in like BO3, where you can upgrade your monkeys, for instance, like stuff like that, or like shield upgrades and stuff. So I guess that's going in that direction, at least in a side quest form that doesn't then persist between games. So that we've had sprinkles of it here and there.
Yeah.
But yeah, not quite the type of thing that you were looking for, it sounds like.
And I agree with the homework thing. I'm really torn on that because on the one hand, I agree. And actually, I do feel sometimes like, especially with newer maps, BO4 thinking specifically, like there's a lot of stuff that like, I'm never going to find this unless I watch like your video or like Noah's video or whatever. Like I just wouldn't find this naturally. But at the same time, I actually don't think that's necessarily the main fault of the mode. Rather, I think that's just a byproduct of the way the content ecosystem works nowadays. Like if you go back to like BO1, maybe not so much, but like BO2, like when you start getting buildables and stuff, I don't think buildables were too homework required. I don't think they required really too much extra reading. And like you said with Origins, I don't think innately that Origins was super overcomplicated. I think that it seems that way because everyone makes guides about everything, and it seems like you have to watch these guys to learn it. And you don't. I mean, Origins is not a simple map at all. I mean, I think that the basic mechanics are pretty simple. Like getting to pack is pretty simple. Even building like base level staffs for the most part, I think is kind of simple. You go like to the crazy place and anything beyond that, and then it's a whole different ball game. But I do think that homework being required, or not necessarily homework being required, but having mechanics that some people would deem homework necessary to understand is actually a cool thing, and it actually creates a very cool gameplay loop when you learn it, and when you, or if you figure it out for yourself, even better. Like figuring stuff out. Like I'll never forget. It's not quite the same, but I'll never forget. I think our team back in Black Ops 1 was like 3rd or 4th in the world for the Moon Easter egg. And we were doing most of it ourselves. I remember the steps got leaked for the most part, but like there's Nick that gave in Sholita, right?
Shout out to Nick.
I remember that. Oh my god! But we did like the first half of the Easter egg for the most part. I believe we did that just like finding out ourselves, and that was such a rewarding feeling. Or even more recent, actually. Me, JC, and Edge we did
Alpha Omega.
Right? He remembers. Hell yeah! yes, dude. That night, right? That is one of my favorite nights of Zombie ever. Even though it's BO4, like that map, Alpha Omega, has a special place in my heart because of that night. Because like that felt like the early days again, because we weren't following guides, we weren't watching videos, we were figuring it all out by ourselves. We were up till like 5 a.m, trying to like interact with anything on the walls, and that felt so good. And I don't want that kind of feedback loop to be taken away, because I think it's so rewarding. Like, is it a big hurdle to jump over? Absolutely. Are like 90% of players gonna be able to do it? Yeah. But I don't think that's a bad thing when it's an Easter egg quest or when it's like an upgrade mechanic. Like, for example, going back to the Origins thing, I don't think it's a necessity that everyone understands how to upgrade the staffs. I think everyone should be able to get the staffs, but I don't think upgrading the staffs is a gameplay mechanic that everyone should be able to do quite easily, and that shouldn't require either homework or like figuring stuff out by yourself. I mean, granted, the steps of doing it are like, with that in mind, still I would say overly complex, but like I think it's one of those really cool gameplay mechanics and gameplay loops that I just think it's the satisfying reward is worth figuring it out for yourself and learning how to do it, even if it's complex.
Yeah. I mean, I would be completely lying if I said that the moments of most joy that Zombies has brought me over the years didn't come from the complicated weird stuff. Like, they all come from the complicated weird stuff. Every single one of those memories comes from something that should not have made it past Jason Blundell's desk, should not have made it past Jimmy Z's desk, should have been vetoed on the spot because it was just too strange. Like, I live for those things, and trying to crack these weird ass Easter eggs that they put in the game, like, I love it, right? And we find ourselves now in an era where, unfortunately, people such as myself and the majority of people listening to this right now who are in the hardcore camp, who like the weird and wacky stuff, unfortunately make up such a small fraction of the overall revenue that the game generates that building a game strictly for our needs and interests is economically unviable. And this is going to be a nice segue, I think, to attack something that I want to use Halo as an example for, which is the problem of trying to juggle the interests of a narrative and the best method for deploying a narrative and telling a story with the interests of a publisher or a business unit or whoever essentially saying, I want more operator skins in the game because I want more money, right?
Yep.
Those two things, I think, are diametrically opposed. I think that they are so much in opposition that in Zombies, we've seen exactly what's happened when the business unit have put their foot down and say this is what's happening, because the story has and without wanting to be too hyperbolic here, because there is good to be found in the story, but for the most part...
Don't me to say it. I'll say it for you.
Sure, we can do that.
So this is not Milo's word. This is my word entirely. Not my words do not belong to the host of this podcast. Vanish, I think the term is you're looking for.
I was actually going to go with evaporated, but vanish also...
Hell yeah, dude. Handshake through the screen. Handshake through the screen.
So, and I want to be absolutely clear. I still like the story as it stands right now. I still like what there is of it, but it obviously pales in comparison to the story that I was absolutely obsessed with and in love with to such a great degree in the past. And I'm curious, before we get into this further, because I don't want to seem like I'm just trashing on the zombie story. I'm not here. For you, with Halo, we had obviously a big wait, right? And then we had Halo Infinite, and it released in a bit of a state, and it was like, oh God, what's going on here? I know that you like the story more or less. How has the treatment of the game and the IP affected your feeling of allegiance to the story and your interest in the story? Like, has that been impeded at all, or are you still the exact same fan that you once were, despite what I think would be fair to say is some mishandling of the IP over the last couple of years?
So I'm very lucky in the sense that I've not had my interest in it altered at all, because the problem that Halo has with that kind of stuff and interfering with storytelling is different to Zombies. So in Zombies, it's very much like, you can't have this story because we need to have players playing as these stupid monetized skins, and they can't be part of a narrative because they're not characters, they're skins, right? Whereas in Halo, it's not like that. It's not like the skins have, or like microtransactions, whatever, have come in and directly eroded the story and run over it and basically just overwritten it into this new thing. That's not what's happened in Halo. Instead, what's happened is, so there's really two things here. So firstly, there were loads of rumors and hints at campaign DLC being a thing for Halo Infinite before launch, because it was the first open world Halo campaign. The world was massive, and then we all played it and we were like, okay, this world is ripe for expansion. There's a lot of stuff here that you could have a whole campaign DLC set here, or fleshing out this area, or doing something with this, loads of that kind of stuff. And then it turned out that campaign DLC basically got scrapped because the entire team needed to focus, or all the resources rather, needed to be pivoted to the multiplayer, because it was in such a dire state at launch that it needed all of the game's resources to get it into the state that it should have been at launch. Mm-hmm. And so That cost us campaign DLC and further expansions of Infinite story, at least within Infinite, which it was very clear if you played the campaign, especially on Legendary, it was very clear that campaign was not supposed to end there. It was very obvious that there was supposed to be a chapter 2, a chapter 3, yada yada. And then there's also the multiplayer story, which is like the typical live service narrative for Halo, which is quite funny, right? So it started off and it was absolutely atrocious. I mean, I can't even say laughably bad, because that's painting it into, it was abysmal. The cutscenes consisted of one Spartan standing there, firing an AR downrange on semi-auto for 3 bullets, and then saying, "Go play in multiplayer." That was basically that was the story for season 2. It was atrociously bad. And then season 3 comes along, which was like delayed by like 9 months or something ridiculous like that. And all of a sudden, it's got like a pre-rendered cutscene that's like really cool, and he's setting up this like actually really interesting story that, funnily enough, is actually taking a few pages out of like classic Zombies book with like environmental storytelling. So I was like super gassed about that. I was really excited.
Wait, so is this story told through new maps? Where is that happening?
So it's not really told through anything like that. So new maps and existing maps play into it partially. So do not really it's not really tied to microtransactions really. It's more so tied to like the theme of a season. Or it was rather.
So it's the marketing that kind of gives you the like where do you consume the new stuff? Do you know what I mean?
You finish the battle pass and you get a completely unrelated cutscene. That was how it happened.
So it's just you just served it. It's just like, here you go, cutscene plays, and then that's that. Basically,
yeah. However, there was this one really cool thing they did where there was this one map that was like a UNSC training facility on this mysterious planet out in the middle of nowhere. And then all of a sudden, like in this cutscene, a grenade explodes in front of this door on the map. This like door that you've walked past a million times already, completely inconspicuous door. And all of a sudden, the paint gets like burned off the door, and there's an Oni logo on it. And it turns out behind this door that was there the entire time, there's this massive mine shaft that goes down into this like deserted like Oni like research facility that's really cool. And then this Spanish AI takes over it, and it's like, oh my god, what's gonna happen now? And then
Spanish AI
the story banished. Oh my god! I'm just imagining Resident Evil 4 like taking over it.
Spanish AI, dude. I'm sold. Put me in, coach. Oh my god. Like, okay.
But yeah, the Spanish AI takes over it, and then people 3 cancel the story, and that's it.
Wait, no. What?
Yep. That's it.
Oh god.
Ended on a complete cliffhanger.
Literally a cliffhanger going down a mine shaft into the right. Damn.
And this really cool cutscene where like your Spartan in your armor is down there with this like really cool headhunter Spartan, which is a kind of Spartan that people have wanted to see in the games for years. Like really cool character, and he strikes this flare and he's like illuminating this like dark room with this flare, and it like ends in like a cool way, and then bang, cancelled, done.
Man, okay. So one of the questions I wrote down just a moment ago while you were talking was wondering to what extent monetization and microtransactions and just everything in that category, just basically money needs and requirements, have changed the story that you've been told. So like a clear example of it, I would assume, is that the campaign would not have been structured the way it was if there wasn't expectation to sell DLCs in the future with more chapters, right? It would have been maybe a campaign that would have been less deep, but more long in the sense of covered more ground in time, just more shallowly, maybe, I don't know. Or maybe it would have felt like it contained more of its kind of plot points and its threads inside that campaign instead of having stuff that felt like it could exist elsewhere. Like an example that I recall that I assume, or certainly assumed at the time, was going to be campaign DLC is the fact that you start Halo Infinite and you learn all of this backstory, and forgive me, I've forgotten who everyone is in Halo, but there's Chief has been like, he's like escaped a ship or something, or he's blown up somebody's ship, or something's happened there, not in the previous games, but in between. And whatever that, what was that, the race called, the like main antagonists of Infinite?
It's the Banished. Okay,
that's the Banished.
Equivalent style faction.
Yeah, so like I thought that we were gonna end up playing that. Like, I thought that we were going to play as Chief going through that Banished arc. Maybe that's just stuff that's in other media, and so, like, therefore it's already been covered, whatever, right? But it's just to give an example of a pocket of time in Halo that I just assumed would make perfect DLC, and that we're just never going to get it now. And so I wonder if, had they not been planning to make those DLCs in the first place, maybe there would have been a flashback mission there. Maybe there would have been something to make you feel like they did address it more, instead of it just being like, that was a thing, but let's move on, and then just going and doing something else.
They ended up just like resolving that in a book, which is one of
In a
343's. Yeah, that's one of the problems with 343's kind of overall running of the narrative since Halo 4. They have a really bad habit to completely course correct a story in between games and then resolve that last story in a book. And it's a really bad habit that they need to drop, because obviously game fans, I would genuinely hazard a guess that 99.5%, and that's being generous, 99.5% of the people that play the games don't read the books. Like, that's just how it is. Like, it's just there's not going to be that much of a crossover there. I just don't think there's going to be. And I say that as someone who does read the books, right?
Yeah.
But they have this really bad habit. They did it in Halo 4, did it in Halo 5, and it's probably going to end up happening with Infinite now. I can see them doing that with Infinite.
It's frustrating as well, because I think there's room for, even though it's been in a book, like, I kind of don't care if they go and tell me a story that's already been told in Halo. It's just been told in a book. Like, okay, I know how it ends, fine, but I don't know what Chief maybe said in this one moment building up to that thing on the ship, and like how he was cool in this one like, all those sorts of things are still stuff that could be deployed in gameplay that I'd be like, hell yeah, this is Halo, baby, even if I know where it's going, right? So from that perspective, I'm like, don't be shy, give us more campaign.
Dude, people have been asking for them to do that now for like well over a decade. Like, there's so many cool Halo books and like external Halo media that would just translate perfectly into a book, like absolutely one-to-one. Like, I mean, I'm not going to waste time doing it now, but I can sit here for like half an hour and just list off like story, short story, novel, comic, animated short, anime, novel, live action that would just be perfect for a game. Like, there's so many, and I can't believe that they haven't done it yet, because the source material is already written for you. You have the foundation is there. Like, you don't have to go through like the whole like early writing phase where you're laying down like the beginning, middle, and the end, the protagonist, the antagonist, the stakes, the motive. Like, that's all there already. You've got that there. Just like, I'm not saying it's that easy, but like, you've got the main parts there. That makes making a game of that thing surely like a little bit easier at least. But
yeah, it gives you like a North Star to work towards as well. Like, you know where you're going and all that sort of thing. And I mean, we've wanted similar in Zombies for a little while now, I think, too. I think from my perspective, I've always thought, yes, like this is a hotly debated topic. The whole idea of like, and I hate this phrase with a vengeance. I think it's actually weirdly kind of toxic in the way that it's used, but I'm going to just use it now just for the sake of it, at least acknowledging it. The sentiment, like, Aether is dead, let it rest. It's like a...
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about here. So like...
Yep.
It's phrasing that I've seen parroted so many times online, and I understand it, right? I understand the fact that, like, in Avengers, Tony Stark is dead, let him rest, right? Is fair enough, dude. Like, I get what is trying to be said there, but I think there's a lack of nuance that is present in it where, like, hypothetically, if we had a story told in a pocket of time, right, that we have already had referenced in the Aether story, for example, Richtofen traveling around different worlds and just doing his own little thing in the gap between Origins and Black Ops 3 The Giant, right? Because there's like a year or maybe 2 years, I forget exactly, that takes place in between there. And like the idea of being able to, it would be like a Doctor Who episode. Like, we'd literally be jumping in with this spacefaring time traveler, and going on a series of hijinks, quests and missions with an overall goal in mind, but we'd be able to have so many subplots and different sort of experiences along the way. That could be insanely cool, and it would still be letting Aether rest. It wouldn't be saying, oh, that didn't happen, by the way. Like, I'm not saying retcon it. I'm just saying continue to expand this picture that's already painted. It's just that like quadrant of the picture is just one color right now. Why not give it some detail, right?
You know what I find funny about that phrase as well, Aether is dead, let it rest. You could have very, very, very easily said that at the end of BO1. Like, Moon's ending was very much right, Earth's dead, time to leave it. Like, you could have very easily said that then, and if you said that then, we would have never had BO2, would have never had BO3, would have never had BO4, yada, yada, yada. Like, that would have never happened. And I agree, like, there are so many, like, spin-off stories that you could do in zombies. Like, even things like, it doesn't even have to be, like, so tied into the whole, like, Aether story. Like,
yeah, you don't even need Richtofen. Like, honestly, keep him out of it. That would be fine. Like, valid, fair enough.
You genuinely don't. Like, you don't need, like, I would want the main characters there, as many of them as could be there. I'd want them there, but you wouldn't need them. Like, you could do an outbreak in day one of an outbreak in a certain country, like, I don't know, for, like, how in NACT you had the 4 Marines. You could do something like that in, like, I don't know, Russia or something, like, 4, like, Red Army soldiers trying to fight it off, or, like, 4 British soldiers in, like, there's spin-offs and stuff like that.
So isn't there some lore? I am grasping at straws here because I don't know the lore of Halo Infinite, admittedly. But I'm going to test you. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. Isn't there some lore somewhere about a character? This is going to be so vague. A character in a city, maybe in like a supermarket or a market. I think a market, who is doing some kind of voice log, and they are hiding from some wider event that has happened probably with Chief in the main, like, you've done it, like you're already aware of that event, but you're getting an alternate perspective from essentially a civilian's point of view while that's going on. Does that ring any bells?
There's not that specifically, but not the specifics about being in a supermarket, but there was like quite a few stories like that. Like, okay. There's one called A Second Sunrise over New Mombasa, which is set during Halo 2, during the Covenant's invasion. I think I might have told you about this at some point, actually.
Okay.
I have like deja vu of us having this conversation.
Okay.
Basically, it's set during the Covenant invasion of New Mombasa in Halo 2, where like Chief destroys the Scarab and all that, but it's set during like the evacuation of Mombasa, and it follows this guy called Ben Giro, who is a war photographer who's doing propaganda for Oni. And like, you know the Halo 2 cover art of Chief, like with the 2 SMGs like that.
Yes, yeah.
So this is really cool. In the canon, that's a propaganda photo taken by Ben Giro that has loads of stuff edited out of it to make him look like yeah, right? How cool is that?
That's so cool. What the hell?
How cool is that?
Dude?
How cool is that?
Oh my. I need a moment to process that, dude. What
and
the
funny thing is, that was actually brought up in the Halo 5 marketing Hunt the Truth, which was like one of the best marketing series of all time, hands down.
Yeah.
It brought him back. Basically, the whole thing is about him like exposing Oni and trying to expose like really cool, like genuinely creepy, like clandestine, like government conspiracy type shit. That's a whole different argument for a different day, different topic. But there's one following 2 characters during the invasion of Ohio that's a bit similar to that, where they kind of take on the role of like resistance fighters against the Covenant.
Sure,
I mean, Ohio.
Whichever one it was, just like even you just giving a little sprinkle, a little dusting of lore just then made me be like, yeah, I mean, of course I want to know more about this photographer guy that took that snapshot and it made it onto the cover art with the stuff edited. Like it's fascinating, and it's not Chief. Like, I don't care about him because he's Chief. I don't need it to be Edward goddamn Richtofen again. I would love that because I love the guy, but at the same time, like, let me play an entire campaign arc and story within Zombies focused on somebody that was at the parade that there was an outbreak of, which we learned about on a newspaper on a table in Der Eisendrache that disappeared when you interacted with it. Like, let that be the only connection. I'm still going to be frothing at the mouth. Like, it's in this world of of potential that I loved so much. And not to deviate too much from like getting us off course here, but the new zombie story feels so limited in its potential. And it's part of the reason that I asked you that question earlier of, has your love of the story been impacted and the IP been impacted by the way that they've mishandled things? Because for me, as a fan, not speaking as a content creator, purely as a fan here of zombies, I used to spend thousands of hours, right, doing research on the most esoteric of topics, digging in to stuff that I felt like was relevant in the zombie storyline, right? I was a massively active user of the Call of Duty Zombies forum back in the day, and then I made a career out of making crackpot theory videos about it all. So, like, I've obviously spent an inordinate amount of time on doing that sort of thing, and a big reason for why I did that, and I talk with JC often, I don't know why it's him specifically that brings this out of me, but I really talk often with him about this whole idea of feeling like as a player, even irrespective of content creation, as a player, it's most exciting to be digging into an IP when you feel like it's going somewhere, where you feel like it's driving towards a future that you can't help but want to see and understand every part of, right? Yep. And zombies pulled us all in, yourself and myself included, in such a powerful way in the past, because it was constantly forcing us to ask the question of what's next and why is it next and how is it next and all of those sorts of things. Whereas nowadays, it's a lot more just like, okay, well, they'll tell a story that fits within the monetization framework that they've got, and they'll tell a story that I know will mean the characters don't die and the stakes, even though they're high, they're still forced within the awkward kind of shell of the Modern Warfare story and the awkward shell of the wider unified Call of Duty story that we now have, right? And it makes me really upset, because it used to be that a map like Ascension could come out and I could be looking up the Baikonur Cosmodrome, and I could be looking up all this stuff that happened in Kazakhstan, and I could be digging into how the Soviet Union sent monkeys into space, and I could be looking at all of these sorts of things and really getting so far beyond the sort of normal part of the internet that we dwell in on a daily basis and end up in a really, really sketchy place, and I would be thriving. It would be the most fun thing in the world. And now the zombie story is like, okay, it's the Dark Aether in the Modern Warfare story, which is like all fictional countries, but it's also real countries. And so, like, am I going to be able... Like, for so long, I was planning a trip to Belgium to go and find the man in the red scarf referred to in the game's terminals. I was going to go to Belgium. How am I going to go to Urzikstan, bro? How am I going to do that? Like, it frustrates me so much.
I'm the same, dude. I would never forget when Shin Onuma came out and I saw Tunguska written just in that hut out a window in the spawn right at the back. I would never forget going on a Wikipedia dive, searching what the Tunguska meteor incident was, and being like, "What happened in Serbia in 1911? What is it?" Like,
yeah,
bro,
dude.
I was like 12 years old, and I was searching like the Tunguska meteorite crisis in Serbia, like. That you don't, and this is a whole different thing, but this is why I so wish that Zombies would go back to having like the root cause of its story be real world things, real world events, real world happenings, real world factions, real world theories, conspiracies. That's why World at War BO1 and BO2 in particular for me were just like absolute peak, because like you had MK Ultra, you had a Harp, you had Die Glock, you had all these crazy things that like it seems crazy because you're playing them in like you're playing them in a like World War II zombie kill 'em game, and it's like, okay, it's just a game, and then you research them and you're like, hang on, wait, Die Glock, that was real, wait. Like, BO2, Harp, I'm trying to say, Harp, that was a real thing. Like, it all feels like it's, like, grounded, and, like, this stuff actually exists, and, like, you have, even though it's a game and you don't, it feels like you have some, like, tangible input to it. It's hard to describe, but, like, that's a feeling that that to me is the main thing that Zombies lacks nowadays, that feeling of groundedness. And when you say that zombies used to feel grounded, most people will just like laugh and say like it's a zombie game. The hell are you on about? But like, I feel like if you weren't there, like you said, in the COD Zombies forum days, back in the, like, I remember going on there in 2011 when Moon first got announced, reading some guys, it's probably your post at the end of the day, like
maybe
some like 10,000 word long post about quantum entanglement and what it meant.
Probably
like,
alpha. Yeah.
Oh God, that name rings a bell. Jesus Christ. Yeah, like that stuff, like, and also another one, like all the like schizophrenic, like crazy war writings in Verrucht as well, like what they meant, like the symbols, and it's just.
So
I don't know, man.
On that note, right?
Yes.
The new story has a character, Dr. Jansen, right? And you've played about 15 hours, so you probably haven't seen all of... have you seen all the cutscenes or no?
I've seen the... Yeah, I watch yours. I watch the videos in it.
Have you seen the season 1 cutscene? Like the newer cutscene?
Is that the one where she like infills with you? Or is that the last one of season 0?
There's like it's a red corridor and... Right. Okay, cool. So let me just very quickly get you up to speed, right? So Dr. Jansen is working for Zakayev, who is a like COD 4 villain. Right? Yeah. Instantly. Okay, so okay, I'm being a little sorry to the people watching the are gonna be frustrated with me for being facetious. I apologize. But I'm just not interested in Zakayev. Let's just get that out of my system. Anyway, Jansen's working for him. And through the acts 1, 2, and 3 of Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, you basically end up fighting this big scary worm, and Ava, Dr. Jansen, is on your side, and you find out that there's some kind of connection between her and some kind of dark ether entity, but you don't know what the entity is. Probably, maybe Samantha, but maybe not. And then... in the season 1 cutscene, previously you've learned that she's taking pills, which she lies about. She says to another character, they're just for headaches. They're actually schizophrenia medication. And then in the season 1 cutscene, you see her in a corridor being chased by zombies, and you're like, oh my God, has there been an outbreak in the facility where she's based, where Deadbolt is based? She kills some zombies, but then she sees Ravenov, right, who you'll remember from Cold War,
right,
and she kills him.
But it's like
then it's all a dream, actually. It's not actually real. So it's a moment where you're like, oh my God, she just straight up did that. It was cool. It was a very, very cool cutscene, right? I think it was the best cutscene they've done so far, despite the fact that it was like relatively small stakes in the sense that like it wasn't a massive giant worm flailing around, but like it was still cooler because it played with my perception in a more meaningful way, and I loved that, right? Yeah. So that cutscene was really powerful, and we now have this question in our minds of like, does she have this dark ether entity inside her? Is she trying to take out the members of Operation Deadbolt? Does she want to kill Ravenov? Or was that just like a fever dream thing? Or will she succumb to the voice in her head saying to kill Ravenov? Like, we don't know, right? I, just as much as the next person, am absolutely obsessed with unreliable narrators in media.
Yes.
They are like one of my favorite things. I just think it's so good. Have you read any Brandon Sanderson by any chance?
I haven't.
Okay, I will not say anything at all here because if I spoiled something in the comment, people in the comment section would behead me. But
okay, fair.
I'm reading the Mistborn trilogy, and there is, and I'll keep it this vague. Don't worry, there's no spoilers here, folks. There's basically just a moment where something happens and you realize that something has been unreliable. Like it's just a twist, right? It's just a twist. I will say nothing further. But I was pretty much like howling at the moon when that twist happened. I was like, this is so my jam. Like, give me this sensation forever until I die. And if I can't have it ever again, end me now. Like, it's so good. I love that mechanism so much. And so that being present in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies now, I'm like, yo, this has some potential, right? But annoyingly, my ability to participate in that story and to dig ends at, I wonder what they'll do next. Yeah. Like, I can't engage further. There's
nothing to build off. There's no like, point to jump off and be like, right, okay, so this happened, so maybe it'll go this way, or maybe this will happen, and and
I can't form a theory because the theory is entirely based on about 3 radios and nothing else. Like, there's a handful of radios in the game. Some of the radios say literally nothing. It's like a soldier being like, I'm a soldier. Ha! I can swear. Ha! That's crazy. We'll do it, guy. It's like that level of nothingness. There's other radios that do relate to Jansen and the story, but often they're telling us things that we already knew from the cutscenes, which is weird repetition. And so the actual list of radios in the game that are super interesting is pretty narrow as it stands right now from what I've seen. And there's no environmental storytelling at all.
Yeah. And that was one of my main problems when they said it's going to be on the Warzone map. Yeah. So it's just going to be a map that's made for a different mode. Like, inherently, it's going to be lacking on the basis of that alone. Like, environmental storytelling, I'll never forget spawning in Shinonuma for the first time and seeing Peter McCain, or at that point, just the hanging man. Right. And being like, okay, right. Immediately, you see that. You see the writing on the walls of, like, Tunguska 115. It's like, okay, right, this is, like, some serious shit. Like, this is a serious location with stakes, with importance, that is gonna, like, have meaning for the overarching story. There's, like, and then the spawn room radio as well, which was, I still think, the creepiest thing in the whole of Zombies. Like, hearing that for the first time, hearing, like, they're like, 4, 5,
R-4808N.
I hope it hasn't happened there too.
It's so good.
Like, so good, dude.
It makes me actually, like, I want to just stand up in my chair and, like, celebrate just from hearing those words.
Like, I am the exact same. And just like the level, and see, this is again a whole different topic, but it's why I think I mentioned it in the last video we did. I actually don't like zombies doing cutscenes. I wish zombies would stop doing cutscenes. And that's one of the reasons why, because I feel like in modern zombies, a lot of stuff like that would be told through it. Like, you would get that in an intro cutscene. You would get that in a prelude cutscene. Whereas having that being discovered by you just like accidentally activating these 3 radios, you're like, oh my God, like, what is this? Like, what's this like going through the radio? Like, what does this mean? Like, I just find that like the level of agency required to hear that and to learn that information and to experience that makes it inherently cooler than if like I just started the map and bang, intro cutscene.
So a question then, right? Because I went off the rails a little bit just then, but I'd love to hear if grounding, as much as it's like a little not grounded, obviously, because it's sci-fi zombie stuff happening, but if the grounding of the previous games and what they used to anchor it to reality, right, is something that you found yourself really attracted to and drawn to and loving over the years. Obviously, I'm being a little simplistic here, but like, what is it that makes you love Halo?
So, funnily enough, again, Halo is one of those games where, at least initially in the Bungie era, Halo's not a grounded game. However, like you said, it had anchors in reality. There were fish hooks that were pinned into reality there. Like, really? the way that weapons work. Yeah, we weren't firing like laser guns. Like, humans weren't firing laser guns. They were firing an assault rifle that was chambered in like 7.62 NATO, which laser guns use nowadays. Or like, for example, the sniper was just a South African sniper that exists nowadays. It wasn't anything crazy. And like, we weren't experiencing like crazy like time travel, anything. It was like, as far as space, because Halo technically is a space opera, but I don't like calling it that, because I don't to me, Mass Effect is a space opera. Halo is not a space opera. Halo always felt like, I mean, the actual genre first was like military sci-fi. It was the same genre as like Aliens, and like to a bit of a lesser degree, like Starship Troopers, that kind of thing, where the gear that people are using, it's not like holographic. It's not like, there's not these like crazy like holographic hood projections everywhere. Everything's very grounded. Everything uses stuff that exists nowadays, systems that exist nowadays. And it was more so, the story obviously isn't grounded, but like the way that characters approach certain situations as well. Like, I think of the Flood reveal cutscene in Halo 1, how that to me feels like a full on like modern day zombie movie moment. It would feel like something that you'd see in like a Romero movie or something like that. And the way that like the Marines acted, you go out of that one door and you see that one Marine like contemplating suicide because of what he's seen. He's got his magnum to his head. It's like that kind of stuff. It's not grounded in a direct sense, and it's not grounded like Zombies was, where there are real world things that link in with it. I mean, there are some things like that in Halo. Like there was a book that came out a few years ago. There was a colonel that had a Desert Eagle, for example, which I thought was really cool. Just carrying like a regular like modern day Desert Eagle. But it's more so like the way that characters approach certain situations and the gear that they use is stuff that if it doesn't exist now, it could tangibly exist. It's not some like crazy sci-fi where everyone is firing laser guns and even though obviously there's a Spartan laser. It's hard to describe. I've made a whole video about this. It's very hard to describe on the spot.
Valid, fair enough. I mean,
yeah, go on.
Well, it's the sort of thing where I think if you look at Halo and you look at all of the I don't know if monsters is the right word to use, but just like the different factions of whether it's the Covenant or the Banished or like whatever, right? These like alien things. For me, I think much of what's exciting about it and really pulled me in is the fact that despite being a story about aliens, it is a story about humanity, because the aliens are only ever reflections of what the human race might do. Yeah. And it feels so anchored in reality in that sense for me, because I'm like, this is just, the Covenant they're just human. They're so human in the way they behave, and yet they're obviously doing their crazy great journey across the stars, and that's not very human, but it feels to me like I could see a splinter sect of humanity getting it in their head that was actually the way to go about life. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that's like sort of an anchor for me, for what I love about Halo. But I didn't know that they sort of actively make an effort to try and retain some, like, they don't just want to go off the deep end of like, oh yeah, like here's stuff that is not actually conceivable in our reality whatsoever. Like hypothetically in X number of years in the future, maybe, right? That's cool. I didn't know that.
There's definitely some things that go off like that, but I would genuinely say in Halo, a vast majority of like pieces of gear or equipment or like weapons or vehicles are tangible, like can tangibly exist. Like I said, like the same round that like there's a semi-popular gun called like a Keltec RFB that people own nowadays that fires the same round as the Halo 1 assault rifle or the assault rifles, like the exact same round, same caliber, same cartridge, same everything. You could feed one round to the other and it worked fine. And it's also as well, one thing I actually did forget to mention is how, at least in the early days, it's kind of lost this recently, but in the early days, how biblically rooted Halo was. So everything in Halo, from like the obvious thing like the Covenant religion, to like even finer things like the Ark of the Covenant, the Flood, like everything is a metaphor, like some kind of biblical metaphor or link. Like you go to the Ark, it's the only place in the galaxy that can escape the Flood, that kind of stuff, right? Like that is again very much grounded in like not just our reality, but like the reality thousands of years ago and probably in thousands of years time as well. Like it's when you have something that feels like it could relate to something in the real world, that to me is when something becomes grounded, and that's what Halo has a lot, or still has to a degree, but the early Bungie days definitely had that more so.
I so strongly agree with that. I love with all of my heart when a story is able to dig in to some kind of religious root or just something to give kind of weight to the decisions that are being made. Another example that I can think of is the Philip Pullman books, His Dark Materials, which are, in my opinion, some of the best books ever written. I absolutely love those books to pieces. I can quote certain lines from memory. Like I'm really, really into those books. And there's a huge amount of religious backing in the way that Pullman writes, to the point that, like, I met someone once and she was writing her like a university research paper for her religious studies degree on the way that Pullman was using religious material to inform characters and overall plot points and all sorts of things in the book. It's very much, there's all sorts of metaphors, right? And I eat that stuff up. Like, give me that symbolism every day of the week. It's so good. So with that in mind, then, with recognizing that your interest in the mode persists despite the fact that it's sort of hit this hurdle of them canceling the DLC expansions that were planned, how the hell do they proceed from here? Like, what do they do to keep, because there will come a point at some point where your interest does start to get affected by them messing you around. And I'm curious how they avoid that. What do they need to do?
The main thing that, God, been begging them to do this for years, spin-offs. Halo, it genuinely blows my brain out of my skull that they have never done any Halo spin-offs aside from technically ODST, which came out in 2009, and Halo Wars 1 and Halo Wars 2. How has there never been a spin-off Jonathan game, a spin-off Arbiter game, a Flood horror game, a like super gritty like Tarkov Ready or Not style like ODST shooter? Like, there are so many things that you could do.
I'm going to interrupt you here. I want you to play devil's advocate. Why haven't they done it?
I genuinely don't. I honestly do not know. I legitimately, if they believe that greenlighting Halo Wars 2, right, which was an RTS in a year that RTSs were basically dead, a console RTS, which even at the height of RTS was a very, very tiny subgenre, in a franchise that in 2016 was not doing hot by any means, or 2017 actually, if they can greenlight that, then I see no reason why they can't greenlight a single-player Sergeant Johnson game, or a Souls-like Arbiter game, or a Flood horror game. I see
not a single reason.
Well, I mean, there are reasons. You could say, like, well, the market's not there for it, but, like, let's look at the Flood horror game, for example. Survival horror has made one of the greatest comebacks in the history of like gaming genres. Like, it went from being all the rage in the late 90s and the early 2000s to being completely dead in like 2010s, or not completely, but mostly dead. And now it's like one of the biggest genres on planet Earth again. Resident Evil is selling 8-figure copies of every game that comes out. Alone in the Dark's coming back, Silent Hill's coming back, there's tons of games coming out in that genre now. It's had a massive revitalization. If you can look at that, and also look at the popularity of the Flood and Halo, despite the fact that we've not fought the Flood in a single-player FPS Halo game for 16 years, over 16 years, and people are still, an entire generation have come and gone since we last fought them in a first-person game, right? If you can look at that and say, nah, not worth it, then I'm sorry, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Flat out, I don't care what numbers you want to give me, I don't believe you.
Fair. Damn. I mean, I'm inclined to agree. I'm trying to figure out what it is, right? Is it that I mean, just to run through some ideas that we can quickly sort of dismiss. Is it that they feel like the lore is something they only want to contribute to in the mainline Halo games? Obviously not. They wrote a bunch of books. They continuously expand the lore in broader ways than just the main Halo titles. So it's clearly not that. Is there some reasoning why they feel like it would need to be their core team? I don't... Who made Halo Wars?
Not 343 or Bungie. It was Ensemble Studios and then Creative Assembly, so neither.
Okay, so let's dismiss that. Is it that they are maybe concerned that they wouldn't be able to spin the idea up in time to actually meet that kind of market swing towards the survival horror? Well, they made Halo Wars, so that didn't seem to be a problem then. Is it that budgets are just ballooning these days and video games are expensive? Well, video games are absolutely expensive, but the cynic in me there then sort of wonders, okay, is it less so that video games are expensive and more that Microsoft actually don't have faith in first-party titles on Xbox because of the fact that they feel like they've lost the console war in this generation, and with what Phil Spencer has said in the last couple of months about how they could release a banger I forget his exact quote, but like
I know the quote you're on about, yeah.
They could release like a crazy suite of first-party titles. They're still not going to catch Sony. And so the cynic in me kind of wonders whether it's them almost kneecapping themselves before they've begun and saying, well, we've lost this console war, so why pour another $500 million into making a big Halo game that is still confined to being on Halo platforms instead of just doing other stuff that feels like it makes more sense on a Sony platform? Like, because that's more or less who won the console war, right? Do you think that could be any part of it? Or am I...
The funny thing is, if they want to try and vampirize some of that Sony audience, the Sony audience obviously love like third-person, over-the-shoulder action narrative games.
Well, there you go.
That's exactly what a flood horror game could be, like down to a T. Like third-person, over-the-shoulder, Resident Evil-style narrative game that also is a horror game. But that's what a survival horror game is.
If that released on PlayStation, would PlayStation players play it? Would they care?
Oh, I mean, that's never going to happen. I wish it would.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is the risk, if Microsoft at their in top board meeting, right, is offered 2 pills. One pill is Sergeant Johnson's survival horror, right? And the other pill is generic person or unrelated to Halo, or it's like Alan Wake survival horror, right? Which are they going to pick is the question. And so the argument for the Sergeant Johnson is the Halo IP is frothing at the mouth, like the audience, is frothing at the mouth for a Halo IP game like that, right? But the pill on the other side is the rest of the world, right? All those Sony consoles out there, and indeed maybe even those on Switch too and PC, maybe they would actually be more interested in the generic one. So let's just back that instead. Let's just make more Game Pass games in that direction instead, right?
So a counter to that would be Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 7 was a massive departure from what Resident Evil had been for a very long time. In fact, what it had been ever. It went back to its like very hardcore, like Resident Evil 1 style survival horror roots. However, there's one Resident Evil character in it, and that's Chris Redfield, and he shows up in the last 10 seconds of the game, and that's his only presence in the whole game. It's a first-person game, which Resident Evil had never done before outside of like some like Wii game or whatever.
Sure.
And it was very much, it was framed as a reboot of Resident Evil that also looked to appeal to an audience that hadn't played, because Resident Evil's problem at that point was that the story had gotten so convoluted, you had to have played like Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6 to know what was going on, and those games were also, Resident Evil 6 in particular was like quite convoluted. There were like 8 main characters in it. Like they basically used it as like an across-the-board reset. They didn't retcon anything, it didn't go back and change anything, but it was like, right, let's start fresh in a new story that eventually will link back in with the existing story, which is what's happening now with like Resident Evil 8 and hopefully 9 soon. But it's enough of like a fresh experience that you don't have to be a Resident Evil fan. It doesn't matter what your preconceived notions are of Resident Evil as a franchise, whether you love it or you hate it, you can play it either way.
Okay.
And that game came out, and it's one of the greatest survival horror games of all time.
So I'm with you, but, and I don't know much about Resident Evil, admittedly, it's just a series that I've not yet dug into in the way that I probably should, right? But let me ask, has Resident Evil ever felt deeply linked to a specific platform, PlayStation or Xbox?
Yeah, it was always heavily tied to PlayStation.
Right.
To the point where Resident Evil 4 didn't even come out on Xbox until the 360. Resident Evil 3 never came out on Xbox ever, besides the remake. Like the original Resident Evil 3 has never, as far as I'm aware at least, released on Xbox. Same with Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 1, like Resident Evil 5. I may be wrong on this, but I'm like 99% sure I'm accurate, was the first ever brand new Resident Evil to release on Xbox as well as PlayStation. So
okay, and so since then they're cross-plat, right?
Yes, they're all cross-plat now.
So So my question here is, if Microsoft were offered the opportunity to back Resident Evil on both platforms, or to make Halo, which, as you said, could only ever be an Xbox game, right? Would they just pick the Resident Evil? Like, could we be getting less Halo IP content than we otherwise would if it had always been multi-platform and it had never been an Xbox exclusive? Like, if it was a third-party, external, like, not Microsoft thing from the very get-go, I wonder, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate here to try and find a reason why the Sergeant Johnson game doesn't exist. But could it be that they know, ultimately, if there's, I don't have numbers off the top of my head that I can pull from, but if there's like 1 billion gamers worldwide, right? The numbers are something like that. If there's 1 billion gamers worldwide, and if there's something on the order of like 100 and something million that have a PS5, I think, and some high number of tens of millions on Xbox, which I think is vaguely in the right kind of ballpark.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, like give or take a meaningful percentage, but still more or less, right? So let's just say it's like 100 mil PS5, and let's say it's like 70 mil Xbox, for example. Could it be that Microsoft are like, well, 100 plus 70 is 170 mil total addressable market for Resident Evil that we could back and eat some of the rewards for, like reap some of the revenue from, or it's only 70 if we just do the Master Chief version or the Sergeant Johnson version, and the Sergeant Johnson version is more of a gamble because we've not done it before, right? Do you think there's maybe a chance that the execs up the top are like, we actually don't want first party stuff. Like, we don't want our own things here. We want it to be other people's stuff. That maybe is even why Game Pass is big to the extent that it is, because they're like, let them handle the IP, let them handle the development and like those other bits and pieces. We'll pay for it, but like we'll push it away from us because we don't want that responsibility right now because we've lost that console war. Do you think that's possible or no?
Not necessarily, no, because there have been a lot of rumors that obviously not rumors at this point. Starfield obviously didn't launch on PlayStation, and there's a lot of rumors as well that like future Bethesda games won't as well. Like Elder Scrolls 6, people are saying like that will not launch on PlayStation. I don't think they're against exclusives. The difference now is that because of the acquisitions and because of Game Pass, an Xbox exclusive now is a game that's on Xbox and PC. It's not just a console game anymore. It's a game that is, so if anything, I think it's the opposite way, because with Sony, they're still very much like, okay, a console exclusive is, it launches on PS5, and then maybe 2 years down the line, it'll launch on PC. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Xbox are very much, right, day one console, day one PC, same time, same place. You can play it on whatever platform you want. And I think, if anything, they have more of an incentive to invest in first parties and build their repertoire out. Obviously, they have like the studio buyouts and stuff. They're buying out. They've bought out Bethesda, Activision Blizzard. They're buying out. There's rumors going around they're buying out more. In fact, there was a rumor going around last year they were even going to buy Capcom. So that whole like Resident Evil thing, I think it got shut down as being fake. But that whole like Resident Evil analogy could have actually been like partially true at one point. There's a timeline out there where it is. But no, I don't think so, because I mean they're still invested in Halo. They're still invested in first party. Gears 6 is being developed. They've got Forza. They're still pumping out Forza games constantly.
But again, okay, so like with Gears, right? Beloved franchise. I can't help but feel like if Microsoft really, really wanted to proliferate their first-party IPs, like the IPs that are closest to the Xbox fans' heart, right? Which I would say is basically Gears and Halo. Maybe there's
Forza. Gears, Halo, Forza.
Forza, yeah. So if they really wanted to do that, like, wouldn't we have seen more than one Gears game in the last 6 years or something? Like
we did. They got a very cool spinoff like 2 years ago. Got Gears Tactics, which was like an XCOM style, like tactical semi RTS shooter that was really cool. It was actually really, really good. That game was highly underrated.
Okay,
really good.
Interesting. I didn't know
that. So they
that.
actually are doing that. And then Forza has Forza Motorsport and Forza Horizon, which like I think Horizon is technically a spin-off because it's like the open. So Forza Motorsport is like the very traditional like Project Gotham, whatever the place is, Gran Turismo style racing game, and then Horizon is the open world game where every game is set in like a very like stylized open world based on like a certain country. So like there was like a UK one, there was a Mexico one, yada yada. So they have spin-offs. Halo is like the only one that's not getting them.
I wonder why. Weird.
Yeah. But the thing is, like you were saying, would it not be better if they were to like just invest in stuff that would go on, not necessarily more platforms, but like studios they've already invested in, that they've bought already, like Bethesda, for example. I think if they ever stopped investing in Halo, I mean, Halo is still the absolute core of Xbox. Like, I mean, I'm biased in saying this, obviously, but like, I still firmly believe that when people think of Xbox, the number one thing that comes to their mind isn't someone in Power Armor from Fallout. It's not the guy from Skyrim. It's not Steve from Minecraft. It's Chief. Like flat out. That character, that single character made the entire Xbox brand, like flat out. And yeah, that was 22 years ago. Christ almighty. But still, like, I mean, even Xbox believed this. Even though the game was delayed, so Infinite was meant to launch with the Series X, got delayed a year, so it wasn't. It was still on the back of every single Series Xbox. Like that to me shows that they still there is still a contingent of execs and people calling the shots over at Xbox who do have faith in the Halo brand and Halo as an IP and believe that like it still has value and still, I mean, beat out every single other game that it could have possibly beaten out to be on the front of the box of every single Series Xbox. And that to me tells me that they believe in it still.
So the original line of questioning that we were going down here was saying, what do they need to keep you retained, right? While they figure out what the hell's going on with Infinite. And I mean, it's had a bit of an upswing recently, right? That's like,
yeah, it's had an upswing. It's not like hundreds of thousands of players.
Sure. It's not changing things necessarily massively yet in terms of the player retention, etc., but it's at least bringing some positive sentiment back into that ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely doing considerably better than it was this time last year.
Right, which is great news. And so I'm curious, just as we sort of wrap up here, what the next step is within Halo Infinite that needs to happen. Like, regardless of whether Sergeant Johnson gets to survive some horror stuff somewhere sometime in another game. How does Infinite redeem itself from this point?
I think campaign DLC, honestly. I think they've kind of exhausted all their options with like sentiment improvers now with multiplayer. Like the big things were Forge and Firefight. Forge and Firefight are there now. They're there. Like you've played all your cards in multiplayer. Genuinely the biggest, at least within Halo fans, because at this point, if Infinite was going to bring in millions of like players again, it was going to have this like Apex level resurgence that everyone always talks about. It would have happened by now. Like it would have happened with the Forge update or the Firefight update, right? Like that they were the updates that were going to do it. It's definitely had a resurgence, but it's not had some like there's not millions of new players coming into the game. Like it's not top 10 on Steam and like top 10 on Xbox. It's fine, but it's not that, right? You need to cater to the audience that are still there at this point because of that. And I think right now the absolute best way to do that would be campaign DLC. Continue Infinite's campaign. People, for the most part, really enjoy the story. Really will, even if they didn't enjoy the story, a lot of them love like the ending, the legendary ending. That legendary ending, I will still to this day, I will never forget my initial reaction to hearing that. That was like 7 years of theorization and imagine if your wildest zombies theory that you made in like the BO2 era all of a sudden came true, right? That was like literally what the ending was basically for me. That's how it felt for me personally. Like this one character, offensive bias, very long story short, absent for ages, was part of like some of the greatest Halo stories and one of the coolest parts of the Halo era, of the Halo universe. Absent for God knows how long, all of a sudden he's back. And it was the coolest thing ever. And if they carried that on in a DLC, that would be the greatest sentiment improver they could do. Absolutely. More than like anything they've done so far. I genuinely think, because like Halo is not one of these games where like, it's not like COD where like people play the campaign, maybe like 10% play the campaign and then go to multiplayer and 90% only play multiplayer. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Halo is not like that. Halo is an anomaly in that a lot more people than most of the franchises focus on the campaign, only play the campaign, and are super into the campaign, right? Multiplayer is not the only thing that carries a Halo game after launch. It never has been. And treating it as the only thing that carries the game is to neglect a very large audience of people. Dude, obviously I'm an anomaly here, but like the amount of comments I get from people saying like, oh, I don't care about multiplayer, I just want them to continue campaign. Like thousands upon thousands of comments. Obviously it's anecdotal, but I don't know. I think there's a huge audience out there who would stick with a Halo game long term if the campaign saw iterative additions to its story and its world, as Infinite should have done post-launch.
Yeah, I mean, I was under the impression that when they were marketing Halo Infinite, I thought there was going to be a new campaign DLC every sort of like 6 months.
I mean, the way they were phrasing everything and setting everything up and marketing stuff made it seem like it was going to be a Destiny-style game.
Yeah.
It had like a major expansion. That was what everyone expected.
Exactly. And that would go on for about 10 years. And I was imagining, maybe foolishly, but imagining Infinite as a platform for more Halo games almost within it, kind of, in the sense that, and again, it sounds insane to say it now, but in my brain, I was like, they've been working on it for so long, and it's so important to Microsoft that it would be so cool to have like Infinite the platform, but then I can sort of like jump into like year one as its own experience, or I can be like, I feel like year two today, and I can play year two of the game in some like, I just had this feeling that surely that's where it was at. Like this could have been, again, in my foolish vision, like the biggest game of all time. It could have been. Obviously, Rockstar would have something to say about that. But,
yeah.
But like,
maybe second biggest.
Yeah, sure. I think second place would still be an achievement, right?
And
just a little bit. As it stands, it's just it's been bizarre because I would be so happy to go back to it for more campaign right now. I'd love to do that. And I'd also be so happy to go back to any point in the past 14, 15 years of COD Zombies and play a DLC campaign expansion for that. I don't even need it to be the zombies mode. Take rounds out, don't care. Just let me dabble in something there. So I'm in alignment with you. And I think, I mean, we've talked about this a lot over the years, but Zombies and Halo have weird parallels in a lot of areas a lot of the time. Whether it's with community sentiment, whether it's with feature incompletion, whether it's with marketing subversion, whatever it might be. And I think both of us right now have actually, like, our astrological kind of planets have aligned a little here. And we're now in a place where we happen to both at the same time really be just chomping at the bit for the story to progress in a meaningful way that can make us excited again. I can't wait for it to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen for Zombies. Like, there's some cool stuff, don't get me wrong, like I've said, with Jansen, and I look forward to seeing what this thing is in the Dark Aether, and I look forward to seeing whether or not she kills Ravenov and like how the stakes are raised there and stuff. But I'm not I'm not addicted to it. I'm not obsessed by it. And I was back in the day, and I miss being obsessed. I really, really do. And I read books. Like, I read my Brandon Sanderson, and I read my Philip Pullman, and I read my China Mieville, and I read all these books, and I'm like, they can do it. Like, and I get, like, they're best-selling authors, right? But, like, just a quick anecdote. I posted an Instagram story about 2 days ago. Follow me on Instagram if you're not already, link in the description. But I posted an Instagram story about 2 days ago at 4 a.m, okay? I had been sitting there for 15 minutes just grinning like a madman because the second book in this trilogy, I'd just gotten to the end of it. It was like 750 odd pages long. The last 150 pages were all so unbelievably good. I was like angry. It was so good. It was amazing. And I opened the next, like on my Kindle, it was like, do you want to buy the next book for like £6? And I was like, hell yes, I do. How did you know? That's crazy. That, must be something that sells pretty well. That's smart. So I buy it and I'm like, it's 3:50 a.m. I couldn't possibly read any more now. Right. But I was like, well, I'll at least see what the first page looks like. That would be rude. Right. If I closed it now. So page 1, it's a map. And I'm like, okay, it's a map of like a city.
That's
here.
already such a good start. I love when books do that. That's
Hell yeah, dude. So I'm like, okay, like it's a map. I'll examine this later. I tab on to the next page. It's another map. I'm like, huh, interesting. Okay. I go to the third page. It's another map. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to do a little bit of research here later on. This is cool. But I then click over to the next page and it says prologue, right? And I am not going to spoil what this page had on it in any way here. Fear not, dear listener. No spoilers are going to be present. But the first line of that prologue went so hard. I was like, this is one of the best sentences that have ever been written. Like, I was so obsessed with what I was seeing. And it was maybe, let's see, it was maybe like 10 words. But they hit so differently based on everything that had happened in that previous book and all of the way that the plot had twisted and turned and done its thing, especially in those last 150 pages of just like intensity. And then to get that line, it was so bold. It felt like I was being hit around the head with like a concrete brick that was made up of all of the stuff that I love in media just in general. And I was getting like bludgeoned with it. It was so freaking good.
Dude, you need to read, if you want to get back into Halo story, you need to read the Fallen trilogy, because when you were talking about unreliable narrators earlier, I was literally like holding back, shouting, Fallen trilogy! Because there's a certain character in that who like, it's not...
Don't say anything. You've sold me already. Right. I don't want to know, like, I don't want to be able to accidentally figure anything out here.
What I would say is in the third book, there are lines like what you said. Just okay. It's like he went so hard. I was reading a bit of it again the other day for a video. Yeah, and I read this one line and I was like, Christ Almighty.
Yeah, but for me, the Halo 3 terminal where he's talking about there's like a line. He says something about like a garden. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So the only Halo 3 terminal that I know like basically off by heart is the last one with Menachem Bias, but I know what you mean. It's the librarian talking about Earth. She's sending a message to the Didact saying that she's found this like perfect garden because she's found the planet where she's going to reseed humanity to.
Right, and it's written in such flowery, poetic language, and going through that in real time on stream and digging and trying to unpack it and understand it was so much fun. And I want that fun in zombies, man. Because I'm sitting here during the game half the time, just being like, oh, is it a thing in the Dark Aether? All right, well, I guess season 3 will tell me everything I need to know, right? Okay, cool.
Bro,
it makes me so annoyed.
Yeah, they really don't get the whole like, it's kind of hard to describe it in this, but show not tell thing, where it's like they just like, they tell you everything. Like, they just tell you what you need to know. They tell you this, that. It's like before launch, when I think it was, you made a video about it, and I think Noah did as well, where it's like, they just showed every weapon in the mystery box. Like, oh, so it's not the mystery box then. It's just the box. Like,
okay, that wasn't me. I can't take credit for that, but that's whoever said that was very sharp. Well done.
It's, it's just the box. It's like the same kind of thing where it's like, instead of you, like with a Shinonuma terminal, or terminal, Halo 3 brains, the radios, or like the Tunguska writing, instead of you reading that and like inferring what you can from it, it's just the game is like, right, here's a cutscene, 2 minutes, 30 seconds long, watch this, tells you what you need to know, done. Like, that's why I don't like cutscenes. They're so two-dimensional, whereas like, it's the same with Halo. When Halo 4, and all the Halo games basically after Halo 3, only did cutscene terminals, or like, even like voice like terminals, I just find them so boring. Like, I want Halo 3 terminals where I'm inferring stuff, I'm reading between the lines, I'm like linking them together, I'm like you said with the unreliable narrator, I'm like reading one, like with the Menachem Bias one, where it's like, right, do I believe what he's saying? Because he's corrupted by the flood, like the the primordial corrupted him. So like, what's going on here? Like, do I believe this? Do I not believe this? And there's elements of that where it's like, what they say in those terminals is twisted and contorted to fit their own biases and like their own views and stuff, and to try and make themselves seem better than they actually are. And it's like that kind of stuff. You don't get that unless, like you said, that you can get it in like cutscenes, but it's a lot harder to do, and I think it's a lot more infrequent.
But it also is. It's difficult because the more you give away, which is hard not to do in a cutscene because you've got all of the senses being appealed to. You've got the moving video on your screen. You've got the audio. You've got the background. Like, everything's accounted for, right? It's like being there. And it's going to be so much harder to pull the wool over your eyes if you're there compared to me listening to a radio on Call of the Dead of Richtofen doing a diary entry. He could be making it up. I don't freaking know. He could be he could be saying he's on Call of the Dead. He could actually be on the moon right now and I don't know it. Like, there's potential, right? It's like going from like one dimension. Like if we say that the first dimension is text, right? And then the second dimension, you've got your y-axis comes in, and it's text with voice acting, like it's a radio, right? And then you've got your third dimension that comes through, and it's visuals of the person saying like that's your cutscene, right? At that point, the cutscene may be even a fourth dimension because it's not only the visual of the person saying it, it's not just a recording, but it's an entire scene that's been built. It's everything about it. It's different shots. Like that is maybe the fourth dimension, is the edit on the passage of time in that moment. It's not just a snapshot of a sentence, right? So with this multi-dimensional narrative option that every writer is given and every sort of dev is given in creating a Call of Duty Zombies or a Halo or what have you, the more you utilize all of those tools, the less fun I can have in being like, but what if, like, I had so many debates back in the day about the difference between Peter McKay and Peter McCain. Because in the Call of the Dead radios, some of those radios seem to say Peter McKay and others say Peter McCain. And so I was like, is there a secret thing here happening where actually earlier when he's referred to as Peter McKay, it's a different person and there's some kind of grand secret here that's going to be revealed. I was so into that idea. And obviously it went nowhere, but I still was into the idea. It still kept me captive for months. So
I think one of the main things as well with stories like Zombies that was always so good at having you be like an active agent in its story is like the end point, I don't think even matters that much. It's how you theorize to get to the end point, or like it's not about the resolution, but it's about like the things that the story sets up for you to theorize about the resolution about that make it more interesting. Like it's why a lot of the times when you spend like ages theorizing about something, the ending is always more or the resolution is always more disappointing because you theorize too much about it. But it's being able to like theorize about it that much. Like for all the stick I'll give it, the one bit of credit I'll give Halo 5's campaign is that campaign ended in a really, really good spot for theorization.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
And I adore how that ended. I think that ending was so friggin' cool. And then they walked it back, the cowards. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, it gave so much room for theorization and for like going down different plot threads and seeing where they might go. Whereas, like, that's one of the things I will say again. It's Infinite Story. It didn't really do that. There wasn't much of that. I don't feel like there was as much that I could theorize about that compared to Halo 5. There was some stuff like the Harbinger being linked to the Flood and the Gravemind and the Precursors, but like that was kind of it. That was really it. Again, a whole different topic for a whole different day, but the fact that they didn't bring back those kind of terminals, Halo 3 terminals, on the Zeta Halo, I will forever be furious. That will forever knock 1 point out of my out of 10 ranking of Infinite's campaign. Forever.
That's. I mean, honestly, I'm inclined to agree. Yeah.
Yep. Like, the amount of potential, like, all the stuff that Halo 3's terminals are talking about, that kind of stuff would have been even more fitting on the Zeta Halo. Bro, please, I'm begging you, read the Fallen Trilogy. Read it.
Dude's about to send, like, I'm going to get a full P.O. box of Halo books in, like, a week's time.
I'm going to send you them all hard copies. You will read them. But no, like that kind of stuff, like it just makes you realize, like, as much as I love Infinite Story, how much it missed and how many things, like, going back to campaign DLC, how many things the campaign DLC could retroactively add or fit in or improve on that we're never going to get.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic.
I will say the faked image that went around on Twitter and I think Reddit a couple of weeks or months ago of a cave painting that someone found in Halo, God. Right? So I saw that and I was so excited, dude, because it ended up being very obviously fake. Like, if you look at the HUD or whatever and you can, like, tell that it's a bad Photoshop, whatever. But at first glance, I was like, are they doing it, guys? Are they actually patching in little weird things that are completely undecipherable? They're unintelligible. They're just strange, arcane references to stuff that we have no hope of fully understanding, right? Like, are they doing that? And are they gonna just breadcrumb us for a while until suddenly a wider picture emerge? Like, what if, I'm gonna sound like a crazy person right now, but like,
no, that's gonna sound like, speak it.
Hell, I'm gonna speak it into existence, hopefully. What if they did a thing where, like, we've talked about the Halo Infinite sandbox, right? And we've talked about the idea of it being a platform. What if they did a thing where there was a character, or maybe it's an AI, and I don't know enough about Halo to use the correct terminology here, so I'm just gonna spit words out and they'll land where they land. So the AI stuff, like Halo 3 has, like, got kind of, like, bubbling in the background that you don't really know about. Mendicant bias, maybe, I don't know. All of that, there's, like, 2 of them at some, I don't know, whatever that is, right? Like, what if there was an AI like that, or some kind of being that was trapped somehow in the structure of, let's say, the ring itself, that game is, like, taking place on, right? Like, and again, I'm gonna get a lot of stuff wrong here because I don't remember, but let's say all of Halo Infinite takes place on a specific, like, Halo ring, right? And let's say that grassy area that I remember really clearly that you do a lot of exploring in, right? That big grassy biome. Let's say that is all, every single aspect of it is, like, man-made structure because it's part of how the ring has kind of grown, right? Let's just say for now. Okay. What if that this AI was infected somehow or trapped somehow within the construction data that was how that ring, like, regrew itself? If it got damaged, it would regrow a rock here, or it would regrow a cliff edge here, or what have you, just in the way the geology is seeded, right? And so what if you have this AI that is like, well, I'm trapped in here and I've been doing this job for a long time. Maybe that's even the AI's purpose, is to be the constructor in that way. But then maybe it's like, actually, I'm going to go rogue now, or, like, something has made me go rogue for some reason, like, I'm tired of this. And it decided to start trying to make out like there was some kind of a history to that ring that was never there in the first place, right? But what if it started trying to tell that story, not to Chief necessarily, but to us? Like, what if it even could break out of the meta narrative, or it could just stay within Halo? I don't really care either way. But what if and hear me out, I'm nearly there. What if it started doing this? It started putting cave paintings on the wall, started doing this, that, and the other, started showing you Oni logos behind paintwork that had been blown off or what have you, so that you, as a player, were motivated to be like, okay, hold on, this cave painting shows 4 pillars here, 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 and here, and if I shoot a load of energy, like I'm powering up the Ascension Easter egg, right? If I, like, pour a load of energy into one of these pillars, eventually it, like, sinks into the ground because it's charged up, but it's charged in a way that this Halo ring would never have been able to do without my interaction, right? Without my intervention. And so what if I've been baited into charging this ring in a certain way that actually is the key that unlocks the ring, and the AI jumps out and it's like, what's good, guys? And then like a plot can develop from there. What if, bro? Like, Give me that juice, Halo Infinite. Give me the platform with which you can just tell other stories that completely subvert my expectation of what I'm going to get from a Halo game. I would love that stuff so much. That would be so cool.
That world interaction is something that I think Halo should be doing so much more of, like that. Like you said, the classic zombies style, like Easter egg style step where, like on Ascension, you shoot the orb like a load of times to power it up so it ascends into the sky, or stuff like that. Like interacting with the world in that sense, to like with no tooltips, no HUD prompts, no UI messages, just something that you happen to do that you find is like, hang on, there's something more to this. That level of like investigation, I called it like investigative storytelling on the My Zombies video, and it's something that I think Halo should be doing so much more of, especially on a Zeta Halo, dude. On a Zeta Halo, that an open world on Zeta Halo, having none of that should be illegal. It should be outlawed in every state and country.
But not only that, right? It's like the interactability, that should just be there. But make me feel like an idiot for falling for the trap that this thing has created. Like, the cave painting would be fake. But I would be there being like, oh my God, I'm a storyline YouTuber. Or you would be there being like, I'm a storyline YouTuber. This, from this cave painting, I can infer that long ago, the Covenant actually had a small settlement on this ring, and they did this thing where they trapped, because the Covenant are evil, they trapped a positive force inside this little box. And that was very bad for the Covenant to do, but then the Covenant tried to cover their tracks, and so I, big bad Master Chief, I'm going to come and save the day, and I'm going to open that box up, and things will be better again. And then the box opens, the sky darkens, the sun extinguishes, the stars disappear, and a voice starts talking to, like, give me that story. Where is it?
Answers on a postcard, please, man. I've got to say real quick, bro. Have you seen Always Sunny? You know the scene where Charlie's in the mailroom? You know the meme where the meme of Charlie Day? That is the most similar I've ever seen anybody to that, but I absolutely love it. That was amazing. That was, bro, if someone who only started playing Halo 2 years ago can come with something like that, I don't see why we can't have that in a game in some capacity. Why? And breathe. Remember to breathe.
Yeah, let's get, like, let the blood leave my head. Okay. So the final question I want to ask here, we've cooked during this pod and it's been great. The final question I want to ask: if a game came along tomorrow that had a lore that promised to be as deep as Halo, with backing that promised to continue to push for further games to be made in the future, and for it not to just be a one-off and what have you, right? Like, it seemed very promising that way. Could you be tempted to be like, you know what? Being a Halo guy actually doesn't really make sense for me anymore, and this is my new jam. Like, whether it were a Souls-like game, whether it were a first-person shooter game, whatever it was, if the story was rich enough and compelling enough, and had enough potential, that you could foresee 5 years of classic Halo vibes or classic old Aether Zombies vibes in that game, would you jump ship?
Honestly, no, because there's something about Halo that itself, like,
wow. Okay.
There can be imitations in games that try and stoke that same kind of feeling that Halo did or does to a degree still, but no, it's just gonna feel like how Cold War Zombies felt to me, where I could tell they were trying to do something kind of classic Zombies like. They were trying to do that, but in the context of like a new style of like gameplay and a new audience with different expectations. Not that would be the reason that I wouldn't go to it, but like, it's like almost like, it's not Uncanny Valley, but it's kind of like Uncanny Valley, where it has like the silhouette of this thing that I know and I love. But when I get into the details, I'm like, it's like, well, this thing's different, and this is different, and this is different. And because of all those things that are different, I find it a lot harder to like it. It's like, I think, honestly, you know what? I've never really thought about this. I've been trying to get into Mass Effect now for over a decade, and I've never been able to. And obviously, Halo and Mass Effect are not the same. But I think the reason I've never been able to get into it, partly, is because I've been going into it with, like, Halo-level expectations of the story. And that's obviously not what Mass Effect is. And that, I don't know, that's complete tangent.
No, I mean, but it's relevant, super relevant, I think.
To answer your question, though, I'd definitely play it. I'd try it. Maybe I've made content about it, but it would never fill the Halo void. Nothing for me will ever fill that Halo void. Like, the level of, like, self-discovery with Halo, in particular when it's something relating to the Flood, or the Foreigners, or the Precursors, that is just unmatched. Like, not to go back to it, but, like, that Infinite's legendary ending, I wish I could bottle up that feeling up and do a line of it every day. Like... Jesus Christ almighty, man. Like, I would do that in a heartbeat. I would never, I was wearing these exact headphones I'm wearing now, I'll have you know. When I was sat here and the screen went black, and then the guy said, offensive bias has been deployed. My reaction in that video, it seems like an overreaction. It genuinely wasn't. Hand on heart was not an overreaction. That was probably the most sincere reaction I've ever had to anything on YouTube. Yeah. Not that my reactions aren't sincere. That's
but like at that point you like you lose consciousness kind of thing. Like
genuinely. Yeah. I remember dropping my controller and I thought the controller had broken because it disconnected as soon as I dropped it. And I remember seeing the like disconnect thing on the screen and I just didn't care. I was just like, I was sat there like running like all the math in my head, like, so if offensive bias is back, that means that and then that was that character and that was that. And it honestly breaks my heart that we've had nothing like that since, and that was 2 years ago. And we're not going to get anything like that for probably like another 5 years.
Oh.
Yep.
God.
Yep. Despite how some zombies might be, just think yourself lucky you get something.
Okay, well, on that note, this has been really a lovely chat. Where can people find you on the internet if they want to look up your crazy Halo videos over the next 5 years of waiting for more campaigns?
Okay, hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers so hard right now I can hear the bone splintering that it's not going to be 5 years, right? Fingers crossed. But I will be with you for that entire duration until whatever the hell is next on YouTube, Hidden Xperia. I mean, everything, just Hidden Xperia. It's awesome. Very simple.
Thanks for joining me today, bro. It's been fun. Those of you listening,
my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for coming along. For those of you listening, if you could recommend us a game series to check out that you feel like has lore as deep as the Halos and the COD Zombies of the world, but also has promise to deepen that lore and to allow that participatory storytelling and that investigative storytelling over the next couple of years, like what would that be? Does it exist? Do you have something in mind out there? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all very soon next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.